What's up? What's up? Everybody getting on? Aaron, what's good, bro? Sorry to hear about your puppy, man.
Well, I think I requested. You
Going
see my
live with
request to
Forrest.
join?
Falcon, Falconhurst Canine, what's up? Michael, what's good? There he goes. What's good, Forrest?
I'm
How's
here.
it going, man? How you feeling today, brother?
Good. Hair's getting long. Look at that.
Awesome. You had cut it pretty short, and then you let it grow again, huh?
I think that you probably. When was I down by you? Almost. That'd have been 2 years ago. It'll be 2 years ago. The end of this year, a year and a half. Yeah, not this last November. But that was. I had it shaved down then. Yeah.
Dang. You know what, man? When you're losing your hair, you just gotta accept it and just cut it.
Yeah.
Just cut it down all the way, bro.
I'm going for one. I'm going for one more hurrah here. Where I could grow it out and it'll be long, like all the greats, right?
What's up, everybody? Tap in. Let us know you're in here. We'll give you guys a shot of Project K9 PH. What's good? Michael, look at this luscious hair, bro. Forrest, how's I really enjoyed your new video that you put out, man. You put out some really good information. Thank you for that.
Cool. Thanks for saying something. Yeah. Are we rocking? Are we going?
Wait up, wait up, wait up. Almost. It's 5. We're gonna give people a couple more minutes.
Okay.
We got 38. Pest to pet was good. We got 41. Let's get to 50. Let's get to 50, then we'll go. Come on, get in here.
Okay, that's when we'll go. Yeah.
It's Lynn. What's up, Lynn?
How do you know? You know all these folks. Oh, really? Yeah, well, it's not really a style. It's just getting long. That's about it. So.
All right.
Cool, man.
What's up?
Not much. Thanks for inviting me back on again. Hi, everybody, whoever's paying attention to this thing. Yeah, you mentioned that I don't, you were plugging me, but that I released a couple weeks ago this kind of a basic tutorial. And I did that because a lot of the content that I ended up including in there was stuff I'd just been working on with people over the last year, especially. Like a lot of folks have been having stability issues in their training for one reason or the other, and it could be a specific behavior. It could be overall the dog is just a little bit too unbalanced, and so a lot of the techniques or the strategies in there are things that I've just been working with people on. And I think a lot of it comes down to our friend Emily Stoddard had just emailed or messaged me earlier today, and she said that like the biggest thing that she kind of got out of it was that she's just feeling a little bit more aware of some pieces that she wasn't being aware of prior to that. So at the very least, like going through the tutorial, taking in the information, maybe watching me train, because I do a fair bit of work with Birdie, the young dog that I'm training right now. In it, you can see kind of how particular I am about the handling portion of it too. So I think that's helpful. So
Right.
yeah, but
right. Yeah, no. When I was watching it, I was
working
like,
on another one.
Nice, man. When I was watching your video, I'm like, man, like it's it's stuff that for me at least, I move past very fast. I don't spend enough time on that, so it was good to get that reminder that you have to stabilize whatever you're doing, whether it be a down, a stand, a sit, or teach the dog to be calm, waiting for the reward.
Yeah, or whatever dog you're working with, there's reasons that you might want to connect the dog more closely to reward because it could have an overall effect on their mentality. So make them a little bit more peaked overall in the training. And and I think that there are, there's information in there with how you might deal with either case. And so like a lot of the things that we've done with our dogs, our Malinois over the years that we're training for the sport work is like teaching them patience, and we triangulate like values. So we pre-mac things like you give me this for that, or we insulate behavior, like we walk back to the dog and call them to a sit before we re-enter the work so that the down doesn't get so hopeful, or they don't suffer from too much anticipation in the down because they perceive it to lead so quickly to the reward. So little things that we do that just kind of help protect our dogs a little bit, dog dependent. And some dogs, like if the reward is like, a source of heat and the dog already runs a little hot, you might not want them or the behavior too close to that. But if their dog runs a little cold, like they're not that motivated, you might want to run them a little closer to the heat, so to speak. So anyway,
I remember when I was working with Wapo, and something I always remember that you would say like something like like adding incompatible behaviors to whatever you're doing, so that you get, say, a dog not to creep on on a stand for IPO, because they know you're going to recall. But then you would I remember you told me like add an incompatible behavior of maybe making them go back to a touchpad and not come forward, and I think that all that stuff really helps in sport, but not just sport, like even our pet dogs, you know what I mean? If we're always doing like the same thing over and over in a routine, I think it's always good. And I wanted to talk to you about that a little bit, and maybe you could explain that to some of the people watching of how that stuff helps.
You're talking about incompatible behaviors.
Yep.
Yeah.
I remember you said like breaking logical pairs and adding like incompatible behaviors to whatever we're doing.
Sure. Okay, so a couple of different things. So breaking logical pairs is just Denise Fenzi. I used to be friends with her and train with her quite a bit. She would talk about that. And so an example would be you throw a dumbbell out, like your dog's in heel position, and you chuck a wooden dumbbell out and you train IPO, and your dog's experienced. The next thing in their mind, logically, that's going to happen is that they're going to be sent for that dumbbell. And so you should be able to, in your training, you should be able to have a plan to allow your dog to be composed as they wait to be sent for that dumbbell. And that should be something that you could strive for. So maybe that your dog is not vocalizing and they're not dancing in place and they're not biting you because they're so frustrated they want to leave and you haven't permitted them to go yet. And so a technique or a strategy that we use with dogs sometimes to help settle them down is that we say it's not a given that you're going to get to this next thing that's in your head. There could be other outcomes here. And so you chuck the dumbbell, and instead of sending the dog to get the dumbbell, you tell them to heel, and you heel away and you reward them for the healing. And what it does is, for the dog that anticipates easy and surely is hopeful and eager for things, if it's just one thing that they're after, it's a little harder to keep it together for certain dogs. But if there's a couple of options here, they tend to mellow out. They pay more attention. They have to be there for the information that says go or heel away. And so what you're doing is you're splitting the brain a little bit. And, we talked about this last time we talked, Oscar. This plays into it as well. Like, we've got friends that do a lot of like socializing work they'll take dogs in, and then they've got programs, and they're very thoughtful about how they do this, but introducing dogs into groups of other dogs, or getting them around a certain type of dog, size of dog, color of dog that might be causing them to feel like a certain way that's causing problem behaviors. But one of the things that we had said, and this goes along with having different reward markers as well. So different markers that indicate or predict a dog a different reward, or release this way to that reward versus a release to that reward. And it divides the brain a little bit. And so our friends that do a lot of this socialization work, they unanimously say, and maybe somebody that's on this call does a lot of this stuff and can speak to it, but it's easier for them to introduce a dog into a larger group of dogs than, say, like just around one dog. And of course, everything, like, it's probably should say is dog dependent. Like, it's going to ultimately depend on the dog, but generally speaking, because that dog couldn't hyper focus on this one dog, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, I've got a dog that gets triggered off of little white dogs. Like, it wants to go and just, maul them, play with them, whatever it's going on. It's got a history of doing this. So instead of bringing that dog out with one little white dog that it's got a history of interacting with in an unhealthy way, and it's hyper focused on it, you've got 10 little white dogs out there. And that dog goes, holy smokes. And it's a bit of a flooding effect. Like, which one do I sit and target on? And so you sort of divide the mind around a little bit so it can't sit and fixate on it. So
interesting.
That's the idea.
Cool. Awesome.
Well, stuff that I think people use and do, but go ahead.
Nah, what's up? Anything new that you've been learning about, or anything that you've been reading when it comes to the dog stuff?
Sure.
I'm always
You
trying to
want to talk
pick your
about the
brain.
Sendaway?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, let's
You
do
want to talk
that.
about the Sendaway? Okay.
You know what?
Okay.
I think that
Cool.
would be good.
Um, okay. Yeah.
Nah, we could talk
I
about the send away. I mean, I thought it was really good.
Yeah, I want
So,
to. Yeah, I want to.
what? All right. So,
I'm doing with
go ahead.
Birdie right now. I'm starting to train the Sendaway. So um,
Awesome.
I used to not give this. I used to not think the Sendaway was that great, right? Like when I first started sport work, and I
All right.
trained a border collie first to do it, and he would run up.
Hold up, though. Hold up, though.
Yeah,
We gotta explain to people what the send away is first, because there's a lot of
go
people
ahead.
here that don't know about the sport. All right.
Go ahead.
So if at least for in the sport of IPO, IGP Schutzen, Mondio ring, and French ring, there's an exercise called the send away, where you in IPO you get to your start line, your basic position, you heel forward, and you tell your dog to go, and the dog's supposed to just run forward until you tell the dog to down. That's for IGP Schutzen. For French ring and Mondio ring, from a basic position, you're gonna send your dog on to run, and once he gets past a certain line, you're supposed to call him back with a whistle or a recall or whatever. So that's for French ring and Mondio ring. So right now, Forrest is going to talk to us about how he started with Birdie and teaching the send away.
And this is more like just an interesting kind of like journey for me and how I think about behavior like the send away, and especially when you've spent a bit of time with it and with a few different dogs you've worked it or you've got friends that you've helped with. It starts to become more interesting when you look at the details of it. And so I used to take it for granted. It used to be like, hey, I'm just going to send my dog out to put its feet on a disc out there, right? And so for me, I was started serious sport work training at the time that I was doing it with Mike Ellis under the tutelage of him. And I had gotten I had the two Malinois dogs that I was training, Andy and Elzer, and was training them both at the same time. And I was also working at the school. And what we did is we always started the dogs by sending them to a foot target. So let's call that a tertiary reinforcer. And so I'll explain that. But so if food, or in some cases toy, is a primary reinforcer, it's the thing the dog is primarily working for. Food is a good example. We use that in training to get the dogs on board with it. The touchpad, when they go and put their feet on it, that can get them a mark. So that's the third thing before. So that's the touchpad. Then they get good, and then they get the reward. So it kind of goes to that level. Whatever. We used to send the dogs to touchpad, so they put their feet on something, and then we would say yes, and we would reward them to a toy, right? And if you do your work, so in the beginning you start really short, and you condition them to really love that touchpad. They love to go put their feet on there, and so a lot of people end up training this sort of thing. And over time, in any sport that you're participating in with the send that has a send away, it's going to be more distance than just a couple of feet from it. And so something starts to happen when you add distance. Like some dogs will start to go, I don't think I really want to run all the way down there and put my feet on that thing anymore, just to run back and get a toy from you. That's the way that you're doing it. And some dogs will suffer that, and some dogs won't suffer that very well. And I guess I'll just would say this about the send away right now, how I feel about it, that with experience in it, you're around it enough and you start picking at it and doing it with different dogs, it's the dog, the type of dog that you have, and the sport that define, I think, how you're going to orchestrate that behavior, how you're going to put that exercise together. And so with Mike Ellis at the school, we would always start them going to this touchpad. And I remember my dogs, Andy and Elzer, were about 2 years old or 2.5 years old, and I just started competing with them, and we were training at Felix Sanga's field out in Lodi, California. So this is a long time ago, and Fernando Dosta was there, a decoy, and there were a lot of people that were having trouble with their sendaways that day, and myself included. With Elzer, he would always run where I pointed him to, and so like my idea of the sendaway is the dog runs straight and fast, I would want, until they can't run anymore. Right. So whether they run into a wall or whether they run into some bushes or a fence, it's like I point you in that direction, even if you can't see the horizon, just frickin' run. Right. Just. And so Elzer once Elzer was poking around with it. But anyway, Fernando just said that day, he's like, I don't understand why all of you guys are sending your dogs out to the touchpad. He's like, we just send them out to toys. And there's reasons that you might like send a dog out to a touchpad. Like it doesn't have as much power as a toy, as a primary. And so if you're worried about the dog blowing off a down short of getting to their, like the toy, because they don't want to take the down because they'd rather just run and grab the toy, that could be a problem. And the touchpad protects you because they don't get rewarded if they blow off the terminal response. And in ring sport, we whistle our dogs instead of downing them back to us, right? So that's a difference that exists within the sport. And so I thought about that. I'm like, yeah, why is everybody sending their dogs to touchpads? And so after that weekend of training, I went back and I asked Michael, I said, hey man, why do you teach as a general rule in what we're teaching folks here to send away to a touchpad? Like, why not just to a toy? He said, well, absolutely dog dependent. Like if it comes to a point where the dog just isn't running with enough vigor to the touchpad, then I'm going to replace it with a toy and I'm going to train to what that dog might need in that particular situation. But why I like to start it that way, and what I'm interested to see from a breeder's perspective, is which dogs will continue to run with vigor to a touchpad like it were the toy. And what it might say about a dog, what it could say is that that dog would work harder and longer for less, right? Potentially. Could be a lot of things. It could be the dog just loves running, so the act of running itself out there was the rewarding part of it. Or the dog, I don't know, maybe it's a certain type of dog that just loves putting its feet on the dang thing, and you've done a great job with that. No matter how much distance you add to that thing and how long it eventually takes them to get there, it never gets old for them. But I thought that was interesting. Like, so from when you're picking, like from I'm not a breeder, you're not a breeder either. We've got a lot of friends that are breeders, but from a breeding perspective, when you're saying what dogs do I want to select, if you liked that trait, that dog would work through more layers of behavior before it got to the reward, that might be very advantageous for sport versus a dog that's so compelled by the rewards, and the further you get like from like the more just they lose in terms of their vigor or their intensity for certain things. And so there's a couple of things, I guess, we're talking about the send away that have been important for me going over the years that have, that I've just been thinking about lately as I'm teaching Birdie it. So Birdie's learning to go to the touchpad, and that's fine. And at some point I might put a toy out there if I want to fire it up. If adding distance and over time, continuing to send her from distances gets her a little bit slower, something like that. Andy and Elzer are litter mates. So they're both now more than 10 years old. And I trained them, I started them the exact same way with the send away, which is sending them to a touchpad. And at about 2 years old, what I'm talking about here at this seminar weekend with Fernando Dosa at Felix Sunger's place in Lodi, when I'd send them at 30 yards or 30 meters was the send away distance, or we were practicing 50, which would be a level 3, which we never did, but practiced those distances. Endy, when I would send her, she would run down to that send away like she was running to a bite pillow, right? And slap her feet on that touchpad and look at me like, give me my shit, right? Elzer, when I would send him down there, would look over his shoulder. He would always do it, but it's almost like he'd look over his shoulder and be like, really, dude? You're going to send me down just so I can put my feet on this thing, just so you can call me back and reward me? And so, like, I don't know which dog, if like Endy or Elzer was smarter or dumber, like what it had to do with, but it was interesting to me that if you would ask me, did I train it both the same? I would say, yeah. But that's two dogs from the same litter that ended up showing like a different response to that training. And so with Endy, for as long as I ever did sport work with her, she always was running down to a foot target. And that was great. She had great speed and vigilance and was straight, and there was no problems with it. And Elzer, after that weekend, I went back out to putting a toy out there. And that's how I always did it, send away. And so here's another, and then this is another thing that I took then after that. So Todd Dunlap is a really fine trainer out of Pennsylvania. And if folks on here are listening or whatever, I could I used to be friends with them. As as time goes on, distance happens or whatever. We're still friends, but people go their separate ways. But he brought basically his club and a few other people to the Worlds 4 years ago and won it for the USA as a team. Like they went out there and did something really special. And before that, at least in the sport of Mondio ring, I don't think that many people expected the United States as a team to show up and do really well, and they went and took first place, which is kind of amazing. But I was out this is probably like 8 years ago now, at Todd's place in Pennsylvania, and we were training. We were having a monitoring weekend, and he would send his dog out to a toy, and on the way back, whistle his dog off of toy 1 onto toy 2. So the dog was running down to get a toy, but when it got that toy, on its way back, he would whistle the dog off of that toy and present the second one. And so what the dog would learn through experience is, I can go down and get a toy if it completes the send away, but being whistled, which is part of the Monty ring send away and the French ring send away, doesn't mean a loss of an opportunity. It means you gain an opportunity back to the person. And what that does is, for us in the ring sport that would be worried about planting a toy at the end of the field or having the expectation of a toy at the end of the field, if we were worried about the dog blowing off the whistle and going into a searching behavior or saying, I don't want, my whistle's not strong enough and my dog's probably going to go for the toy, so I'd rather have a touchpad out there so that I'm not at risk of rewarding them when they do the wrong thing. That's actually a really clever option, because it mentally switches the dog upon the whistle. And what you have is the greater likelihood that when you whistle the dog off shy of getting toy 1, that you're going to have the response we want, which is a excited and enthusiastic turn prior to getting toy 1 to come back to you for toy 2,
Right.
which is kind of a clever thing.
Yep.
And I'll say, I know I'm talking a lot. Do you mind?
That's all good. No. That's why you're here. I'd rather you talk to me.
Okay, cool. And this is something that probably started off like changing my mind about looking at the send away different. There's certain exercises that we gravitate towards. Like, I've always liked healing, and something I put a lot of time in. And some people like the retrieve, some people love the send away, and some people whatever scent work, or tons of different stuff that you can do. But the send away was just something that didn't think so highly of. But Mia Skogster came to Leerburg and presented a seminar, and this was probably like 7 years ago now. And she used to work with Peter Shirk a lot, and I've never met Peter Shirk, but I just admire him. I admire his training. Like, when I see what he's doing, and I've paid attention to him for a lot of years, and someday I would like to meet him, but I really admire his work. But she explained Peter Shirk's send away, and I just thought it was really interesting how much thought went into channeling both like the emotion and having these precise aesthetic responses within that. So what the dog actually behaviorally does, what you can see, and also what you can feel. And I think they just balance that stuff out so well. And so I'll give the short of it. And I was just really impressed with how thoughtful and considerate of the dog that this was. So in the IPO or the IGP, Schützen IPO, now IGP send away, like Oscar had mentioned earlier, the dog is meant to run fast. And then when you say down fast, generally what people want. And so for the first year of the dog's life, they do what's called, they magnetize the dog downfield, right? So they have the dog's favorite toy or pillow kind of buried in a hole, not buried, but in a hole so the dog can't see it. But the dog in the beginning, they'll see it, you put in there, but its dog is close, right? Maybe it can see it. And they go, on. And the dog goes, whoa, and it goes and gets its favorite thing. And it's just a short distance. It's easy, right? There's no thought to it. It's like, look, I just want to go grab that thing. Really charged up. Let me go. Cool. And so for the first year, what they do is they add distance, and they might go to new locations. But the whole thing that they're doing is they're saying, when I point you straight, you just run until you can't run anymore, and your favorite thing is there, and believe it. And those dogs are fired up for it, right? And they'll do that just for a year. Boom, have big distances. Separate from that, they are working on the down, which is another behavior that they need in the send away for the IGP. So separate from that work is the down. And then one fine day, after a year, let's say, that's just a number that she had thrown out there, it's the first time they're going to ask that dog to down in the context of running the send away, right? And I thought this was the most clever part about it. And so they go back to a very short distance, but not so much that the dog can see that there's not their favorite toy in the hole, and they're on their home field, and it's really easy, and everything is working in their favor, and the dog is so certainly sure it's going to run up to that spot and find its toy like it did 1,000 times. And they send the dog out, but there's no toy in the ground, right? Their bite pillow or whatever's not there. And what happens is the dog runs out there, and it looks at the spot where its pillow is supposed to be, and it's in disbelief, right? And who knows what it does? It looks there, and it's like, I can't believe it. And what she said is often the dog will look back at them and be like, what the hell, right? And then what they'll do at that point is they'll say down. After the dog sees that there's no toy there, they'll go down. And they're not bothered if the dog doesn't go down right away. They would actually expect that, right? Because the dog's mind is probably a little bit blown right now. Like, dude, for sure my toy is going to be here. It's not here. I don't know what to do right now. Oh my God, what's happening? Down. Hey, down. And finally the dog downs, right? Maybe on 2 or even 3. And all of a sudden they go, pox, and they pull their toy from them. Right? And the dog goes, holy crap, this never happened before, but I'll take that toy because I like playing with you because we've done that, right? And they want to be close so that when the dog does discover that there's no toy there and they're saying down, that they can, be there to sort of help facilitate that. Like, hey man, just go down. It's okay, go down, right? Not a big deal. I know that, you don't know what's going on right now, but cool. And so, and then whatever you do next, like depending on the dog, maybe you have the toy planted there again, but you'll repeat that, right? So all of a sudden you send the dog again, they run out there, and if that's now the dog's been magnetized downfield for the first year, right? And so the dog runs down and it finds their toy there. So they're still in a state of belief. And what they'll do then over time, though, is like you send the dog down and the toy is not there. You say down. Maybe it's the second time the dog is experiencing the toy not there. And maybe they go down quicker this time, right? So you see the mind working, like no toy here, down. Okay, I'll go down because last time you popped a toy. Boom, pop a toy for them. And then here's what they're looking for. And I think this is the clever part. They're looking for that the dog runs. They send the dog down there. And when the dog experiences no toy in the hole, it downs itself. Right. So the dog goes, I run down there, no toy. No toy means my best next option is a down. And the dog downs themselves. Right. And then pox, they pay the dog. And what the dog is learning eventually, and there's some more to this, is that when you say run or Anavan or whatever, that means the toy's there. When you say down, the toy is no longer there. My mind switches. I'm remagnetized back to you. Until you say down, I believe the toy is there. Once you say down, I've learned through experience that down is associated with an absence of toy in the hole. So the dog goes, woof, whips snap, like comes into a fast down. That's a whole other thing of training. Turns to look back at the handler if you want that, because they're the ones that are popping the toy. You could find some other way to end that thing if you wanted to. But I just think that's really clever that they gave the dog like the consideration to have that experience themselves, to go, there's no toy here. I'm catching on. I'm going to down myself because I think that's what happens next. And he calls it magnetization, right? Anavan, the dog is it fully believes. For a whole year, it's been running down there and there's been a damn toy down there. Down. But it's learned through this clever training and consideration of the dog that when that happens, the next best option is to go and keep down. Woo! Here's why I say that, though, right? And this is not like so let me just brag on Peter Shirk again, right? That's Peter Shirk and how he does it. And there's a guy, a clever trainer, and I've seen them, like Marco Cosconsallo's worked a lot with him, and I see them doing training that I saw Peter Shirk do first. That's just what my journey with it is. That's what I say my story is. So, but I see this used a lot now, and it's quite clever. And so this is what it meant for me. It just meant that the send away is interesting, and it can be that detailed. And you can put that much thought into the damn thing, where I used to kind of look at it and be like, yeah, you just send your dog there down there for what, right? And so here's one of, I had Joe Sonante, our buddy Joe. I think that he right now has got the best, him and judo, what he did with judo, I think speaks to me as the most ideal way to approach a send away right now. And the Frisbee is the touchpad, and the dog is disciplined enough that when you tell it to put its feet on the Frisbee, it can do it. That's a training piece. The dog is also focused enough that when it goes and puts its feet, and this is probably what it wants to do, it's learned, it puts its feet on the Frisbee is also a toy, right? So if you say, whatever your word is, pox, whatever, now the dog can grab the Frisbee on the ground, kill it, bring it back to you and play it or whatever. So it's not only a touchpad, it's also the reward that it's standing on. And so if your dog suffered any loss of motivation for running out to a tertiary, a touchpad, well, if your touchpad also happens to be a reward, then you've got a little bit of extra juice at the dog's paws.
Yep.
And there's a couple of like smart elements, and he says it really enhances like his jumping too. But what is good about it is the options, right? So when this is finished, when the dog has the discipline to put its feet on the thing that it wants to bite, but doesn't bite it and honors that and puts its feet there, right? And when you have signal control where you can say, I'm going to whistle you off of that without biting it, or I can say pox and you can bite it, or while I'm sending you out there, if I don't say anything, then you're going to just take the Frisbee right away. But this is how he handled it. Tell Judo to run, Judo would run out there, and if he didn't say anything, Judo could pick up the Frisbee and come back and play. So he's rewarded directly to it, right? The reward is right there. If Judo's running out on this, and so Judo wants to run fast, and Judo liked running too, Joe had said. He probably just likes running. He's a running fool, right? That could be what really like anchors it all. But if he sends him to the send away, and on the way out there, before he gets there, he says plots or plus, right? It's place. Judo's got to define behavior that means. So he would run out to the Frisbee, that's his toy, and down on it. And then Joe could reserve the right to whistle him back, which means, boom, you don't get to have it. Or he could go up and reward him on it, or he could just say, pucks, and let him bite the goddamn thing that he was sitting on top of right away, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the same thing when we just talked about at the beginning of this conversation when we were saying, like, dividing a dog's brain a little bit so that you can have, like, downing on a Frisbee is incompatible. How do I want to say that? I want to say this the right way. It's not necessarily incompatible with it. It's just got to do with having other. It's not just a given. You're not just going to run out there and grab the damn thing. I'm going to have 3 different things that I can have you do, and you need to be super concentrated and focused and pay attention to me to know which one they're going to be. And you've done your training really well, so the dog understands. Like, the dog believes you. It's not a loss if you call them off the Frisbee because you've got something of great value back towards them. Or if you ask them to do a couple of behavior changes or whatever, they do that stuff because your training's tight and your dog doesn't perceive you as taking away from, like, the fun. But anyway, the focus, the focus you get doing something like that is helpful. But this last thing I'll say on the send away, I just wanted to comment on this. I'd heard somebody just talking about how their preferred way for teaching the send away is to a touchpad. And the first thing I thought, well, we could all have a preferred way, but like we were talking about, it's going to be your sport. And I wasn't sure that this person had a lot of experience in sport, so maybe they were just talking about in general for a pet dog or something. But in sport, there's going to be certain things like if you're judged on speed. In ring sport, it doesn't really matter. Like the dog can lollygag along there, and as long as they get between the area that they're supposed to get, you're fine. We don't want to accept that, right? Like if we're doing ring, we want our dogs to look great while they're doing the things, and for it to be clear, and we want to harness their enthusiasm just like in any other sport you'd want to do. And so that wouldn't be enough to me. I'd want the dog to run fast, but. So the sport, though, and how it's scored and what the details of the behavior are going to influence what you choose to do. And then your dog. So you can have as a trainer an ideal way that you'd like to train it, and your ideals could be good, like touchpad, less risk if the dog does something wrong, they don't get rewarded then, for blowing off the recall, blah, 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 blah. But I don't really give a shit, right? Because I think what it boils down to is it's the dog and it's the sport that's going to tell you ultimately how you go through there.
Yeah, I remember when. Go ahead.
Sorry. You're gonna say when we talked about that?
No. I was gonna. No. Go ahead. I'll let you finish, and I'll.
Yeah, I'm almost done. I'm monopolizing the time here. This was where this felt like a little bit more of a philosophical conversation, almost to have with somebody, though. And so the reasoning, while the person had said that they wanted to send the dog down to a touchpad is because you don't have to convince your dog that there's a toy down there to get the send away, right? Which might be harder to fade. They realize it's not down there. Now your cover's blown and the dog's like, that's not really down there. So you've got to operate off this belief system that the toy is down there. And that's what anchors your send away. And so the touchpad might be easier to fade. You don't have to convince your dog there's a toy down there. You still have to fade a touchpad, right? Essentially, but you might have an easier time calling your dog off or putting him in a down or whatever. But then, so what if you have a dog that doesn't run like Elzer? All I had to do was switch it back to expectation of a toy, and his send away just like became lightning fast again. He was always correct before. He always ran and did it. I wanted more speed. The toy was the easiest way to do that. If I wanted to stick with the touchpad, what are my options for encouraging speed? Like, what would you say to that?
Direct reward. Put the.
I don't want to do that though. I don't want to function. I don't want to have to use the belief. I don't want to rely on the belief that the toy is down there at the end of the field to anchor.
If you put the toy underneath the touchpad,
sure,
and you send them there.
Let's say though, right. But I think this was more like pressuring the dog to get there.
Oh,
right? So
got it.
Yeah, let's say you're using a remote collar, and you can escape your dog down there. You can say, hey, did you feel this pressure? The only way to get rid of this pressure is to run your ass off and get your feet on that thing. And so
Which
you
do a
could
lot.
put pressure on a dog, right, to push them to a touchpad, right? And then pretty soon your dog is running to the touchpad really fast. And if they don't, maybe they get applied positive punishment for being slow. And so the dog's running, and if they don't run fast enough, they're afraid they're going to get some pressure put on them. So they're running to avoid the pressure, right? If the reason that that person didn't want to use a toy is because they didn't have the availability of a toy in a trial, what sport allows a remote collar or the use of punishment?
None.
Right. So now we're in the same position right now, right? So if our reasoning here is I don't want to use the toy because I don't have it in trial, but I'm willing to use the remote collar to put pressure on my dog to push him to a tertiary reinforcer, then we have the exact same problem, if you want to call it that. My dog's functioning on the belief that the toy is down there. Your dog's functioning on the belief that if they don't run fast enough, you can correct them with electricity, right? And so it's two parts to the same.
Interesting.
But I just think that if somebody was like, my point here is that when I heard the person kind of mentioning it and speaking about it that way, I thought, well, your argument is not correct or better, but I understand why you would think that way about it. But you're both in the same spot. And last thing I'd say about this, one of the other methods that I think another method that I think is interesting about sending a dog to like a target is to like race them or make them feel competitive about it. Like, hey man, if you get out there, if you run fast, you'll get there and you'll get the reward that comes by putting your feet on there. Or if you don't, I'm going to call you back early, right? I'm going to call you back as a punishment. I'm going to call you back as punishment for not running fast enough, and you won't get to the target, which leads to the toy or the food or whatever. But did I play with that with a lot of dogs? I've got a lot of AKC friends that play with that. You need a dog that feels a little bit competitive inside that's going to put up with that particular strategy. And if you've got a dog that's just not competitive, dude, they're going to look at you like you can run to that damn thing all you want. But so it takes a specific dog to actually play that competitive game with it. So.
Yep. Man, you gave us some interesting stuff right now to go back, because it doesn't just apply to the send away. It could, you got to figure out your dog and see what is going to work best for your dog. I remember the Tony Mushegan, when Joe brought him down and he saw everybody using the touchpad, and he said the same thing. He was like, why is everybody using this stuff? He was of the belief of like, I want power in every exercise. Like if your dog's gonna be in front of the jump, he knows that he needs to have the right emotion and power to go through it. The technique of how he's gonna lay down after and all that's secondary, right?
Right.
Same thing for the send away. People want to get all these like perfect behaviors with puppies before they're not even old enough to comprehend. It's like just create love for the exercise. And I think the way that you put the send away is a perfect example of like, hey, you're gonna give your dog choices, and when he realizes that the toy's not there after all that time, the next best thing is gonna be to down. So I think it's very important to really focus when we're working with our puppies, or at least me, to get the right emotion first, and then focus on the precision. And I mean, for me at least, that's how I see it for things like the send away and all that.
Right, yeah. And if for a dog, getting speed was as simple as just putting a primary down there and letting him run to the expectation of that, or the other option was you wanted to put pressure on him to get him to run faster to escape it down there, but you have neither option, a collar nor toy in trial. I think just which one would be easier or simpler to do, and so it's always a trainer's choice. But I just thought that was a faulty argument that the person had, and it made me think. It was a good thought thing. So Emily just commented on something, and maybe she would say more, but she said, what are you telling the dog in trial when you have to whistle? And it's been 4 years it's been 5 years since I've been on a trial field, and I just didn't tell my dog shit. I said send away, and when they would run down, and I would whistle them when they crossed the barrier. But
I think what you explained of Todd, I think it was perfect, right? Like the next best option is if you whistle, there's not going to be anything there. It's going to be over here with you. So, and you could work that different ways. You could even, you could break that down different ways. Whistle him back instead of sending him forward first, and then little by little moving that something. You get what I'm saying? So instead of just sending
Yeah,
him, put
yeah,
him on
yeah,
a down, call him
yeah,
back to you, that type of stuff.
yeah. Just I'll comment on this. Uh, Emily, how you would actually connect that dot to a dog. So first of all, you have to have a dog that's properly conditioned to, or definitely has the desire to reach the touchpad, right? And the tricky part is with whistling the dog and getting them to acknowledge that that was punishment for not running fast enough. That's the tricky part, right? Like that's where the training comes in. And so like what you would have to do is look for an incremental increase or some increased quality response and an increased quality of response the next time you did it. Let's say that you set the dog down there and they were just dogging it and you're like, blow a whistle. You're not getting down there, bro. That's it, right? And you set them up again and the dog's like, oh man, I must not have been running fast enough. I don't know exactly how the dog connects that dot, but they have to be conditioned to want to get down there and put their feet on it. And you send them, if they don't run fast enough, you blow a whistle. It's the next response that matters. So if you send them again and they run faster, you have to let them reach the touchpad so that they can get the reward. Because what you saw is a dog that improved. They said, oh, I didn't run fast enough last time. This time I'm going to turn it on. And maybe the dog's frustrated, so they naturally expend that energy that way anyway. Or what you really want is for the dog to understand, I wasn't running fast enough. Give me a chance to do it again.
Got it. Nice.
Yeah, man. So all that to say, I'm working on Birdie's getting a little bit of a send away action going on.
Nice, man. Nice. Awesome. I trained with one of my buddies yesterday, and he's like he's been training for a bunch of years now. He does Schutzen, and he brought this little puppy out, a little German Shepherd puppy, and takes her out, and he's like trying to correct her for focus, and I'm just like, yo, like she's just not getting it, the puppy, right? And now she's like give it a little yelp, and then try to nip him a little bit because it was like very unfair, and I'm like, yo, like, what are you doing? He's like, well, like she's been doing it really good at my house, and I don't know why she's not doing it here, and I just wanted you to maybe go down that a little bit. I figured to me it just felt like the dog didn't know the language that he was speaking, and he was being very unfair for her not listening to him, and
Yeah.
so yeah. Anyways, but I just I was like, man, people need to realize, like, sometimes if your dog, like, go back a couple steps when you're not in your
Yeah.
normal training environment, where
Yeah.
where the puppy's doing all that.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
wanted
dude,
to get your opinion on that.
yeah, this is my life right now with Birdie, right? Is I go to new places and she doesn't have as much power as she does at home. And it's just, that's just kind of the type of dog she is. She's a little bit, she's not as comfortable out in places. I've done a ton, dude, I bring her tons of places and she's made strides and I'm happy with her and she is what she is and I'm having a good time with it and learning a lot. But I never get as much, in another place. And so I'll offer this story. This was Mike Ellis told me this. This is like a third-hand story. I guess maybe I do this too much, but it's in regards to Ivan. He would go to, he was a really great competitor, and people want to know how he's training. And he would Mike Ellis told me this. He would like call up a place, like a club, maybe in Florida, if he's living there, and say, "Hey, I'm going to come and train on your field. Is that okay? Or can I come and join your club training?" Sure. And he would come and show up and just chuck a Frisbee for his dog, right? So new environment, things going on, dog's first time being there, and all he's doing is playing that very basic like game of pay attention to me and let's have some fun together. So the dog learns, like, when it goes to new places, it's not asked to do more than it's capable of. It's really fun. This person just like pulls out the favorite game and they do that sort of thing, right?
Nice.
And then the dog starts to learn, like, maybe when you go to new places, it's going to be a good time. And this is if you feel like, or if you desire for your, and this is what we aim for in sport, but that your sport work and your play are extensions of each other, right? Like the play is a conduit, or I'm sorry, the work is a conduit to the play and back and forth. And so that's like, you want the dog to feel about each part of those things the same. Like the energy that they have for the play is the energy that they bring to the work, which leads to the play. And so if you've got a great game of play, like Mike Ellis always called it engagement, you're tugging with your dog or you're doing food work or whatever, you go to a new place and you've got the ability to capture your dog's imagination, right? That's step one. But if you go to a new place and your dog is like distracted by it, and you don't even have a dog that goes, I know that you've got something fun for me and I'd like to be a part of whatever you've got in store. I'll play that game with you. I'll eat that food. And you're trying to do really complicated shit with your dog. It's going to be a disaster. And you're going to immediately, they're going to develop this distaste for it. So we always like, I'm living that life with this young dog I got is I wish, like Elzer, dude, when he was a puppy, man, I bring him anywhere. It was just like he was on for it. So anyway, it's a good thing that we have to like go through and be considerate of the dog. But if you try to put, like if you want to play that game where like your sport work is an extension of your play, well, you must have the ability to play with passion in that place or whatever your thing is, food work, blah blah blah, before you start asking for behaviors that lead to that. And I'll just want to say this is a conversation I had with a couple people recently. Like when we use like a call to action word, or you say like, are you ready? Or show me what you got, or business time. So we have this like engagement on cue. I find that that's really useful in situations where you're not sure if your dog is willing to interact with you or is going to take that window of opportunity when it's presented, right? So like it's a different mentality, the way that your dog enters this specialized training, especially if you're into sport, than the way that they live everyday life, right? Like when I'm walking around with public, Birdie like will walk around, carry a toy in her mouth. Elzer does it too, but it's different than when I'm saying like when I kind of present the formal thing, like, hey, we're going to do that training thing right now. Like I want more energy. I want like almost some obsession with that, like some real fire and focus and intensity. But I don't want her walking around on a leash when we're just out migrating, like staring at me doing that stuff, right? So there's a split here, and I would see like I had some online students that would, at the top of their videos, they'd always go out, they'd walk out to their training field. They had dogs that were motivated. The dogs are already staring at them. Like, I know what we're going to do right now. I'm in that state of mind. And then they're like, are you ready to work? It's like your dog, no kidding, they're ready to work. They're staring at you. You've got all the answers that you want right now. You don't even have to ask the question there, right? So there's a point, like if you're using this, are you ready to work? Prove it to me. If that's a way that you give your dog an opportunity to push you so that they can push hard enough to earn behaviors, which lead to more behaviors, which lead to rewards, or wherever the hell you're at with your training, like that's the function of that. It's like you don't get anything for free. I'm not going to whip out 6 tennis balls and say, please interact with me. It's like I've got nothing. I'm standing neutral. You want to do something, your dog learns if they push you, they can get interaction with you, right? That's the function of it. But if you walk out onto your training field and your dog's already staring at you or starts offering up something right away or whatever that looks like for you, you don't need to ask the question. You've already got it, right? You could ditch it at that point. But if you're out in public and you've built at home where your dog is powerful, where they get it, where they're comfortable, if you can say, hey, are you ready to work? And they've got some defined response. They jump in the air or they just sit and stare at you even when the sky's falling. You're at home and they're like, I'm so in belief right now that I'm so captured by you right now that I have to sit and stare at you. Give me the damn thing. Give me the food. Give me the toy. Whatever. Now you've got like, what the dog's response to that question is, and you know what it looks like when they are ready to work. So it becomes useful when you want to test if your dog really is willing to give you that energy, if they're comfortable enough to participate in that right now. And so you're in a new place and you go, are you ready to work? And your dog comes and to a front, or they offer the behavior, whatever that they normally do, that they do at home. If they do it in the new place, you're probably in good shape, right? You say, hey, heel. And you're probably going to get nice healing because the dog was ready. You could tell because you asked them first.
Right.
And so you don't have to do that if your dog's already sitting there like ready to, unless it's just part of your routine and you don't want to like miss out on it. But it's pretty apparent. You start going to your club, your whatever, your dog's going to be ready to work.
Yeah, I have noticed like some dogs, and it's probably the way they're doing it, but they ask them like, are you ready to work? The dog will bark a couple times, look to the side. Like it's almost like a behavior that they're doing now, not really like a start button for the dog to understand.
It's not functioning in the way that it's meant to function.
For sure. Yep. And I think that, so like right now, what I'm doing with my puppy, when I bring him out, I'll have somebody grab the line and I'll just step away from him and I'll have him bark. I don't even, I'll ask him one time and then he barks. And then I just, start playing with him or whatever. And I'm trying to turn that into a cue. But I definitely don't want it to be like a behavior. Like, oh shit, I have to do this in order to get my, my reward or whatever.
It's an opportunity for the dog to demand something from you, right? Like, I'm barking my head off because you give me the next goddamn thing that I deserve right now.
Yep.
But if you
But I
skip,
think that's
if you
gotta
chimp on
come.
the barking, or if you've never established the barking and you just use it, like do it 3 times and get there, the dog never develops the intensity and the demand that you want, right?
Yep. But the thing is, I feel like if it comes from like you're asking him and then he gives you a bark and you pay him, rather than if it came from him out of frustration
Mm.
and he starts barking and now it turned into something. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying?
Yeah.
So instead of like, okay, I'm gonna ask you to bark, that's just the behavior. But if he barks out of like what like I want whatever you have, now it's gonna work how it's supposed to work. And
Yeah.
I think it's very important for people to look at that.
Cool. That's a good distinction. Yeah, that's a good distinction. And what is that? The difference between a reactive and an active dog?
Yep, a
Say
reactive and
something like
active
that.
dog.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And when it comes to dog training, you already know, if you're sometimes we run around with the treats and trying to get the dog active and to want to
Yeah.
work for us,
Yeah.
and it doesn't work that way because we're not
Yeah.
going to be able to have that in competition. So
Right.
I
Right.
think teaching a dog to to turn on to be active is number one step for at least for IPO when it comes
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. You want to. I would say. I think. Have Tim Cutter on again. Like I should be able to nominate the next person. I know you already had Tim on. I didn't listen to it. I
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But and you guys should talk about, because you're both IPO guys and he's really deep into it. But like the function of barking and how you're making it and how you guys like using it. That'd be just an interesting conversation. Even if anybody that's on there watching and pays attention to Oscar and doesn't know that Oscar's a dynamite sport trainer. He goes out there and does kick-ass stuff with Guapo. He's got a bunch of buddies that do it too. I would really enjoy a conversation that you guys might have just about like barking and how you're using it and capping a dog from that active barking state back to like composed obedience. And I just feel like, me, like I've only ever done ring sport and dipped my toes in that sport with my 2 Malinois, and I had fun doing it. But I like the, like I admire IPO and the control, the emotional channeling and the beauty and the precision of the work and how those 3 phases you're looking for different things. And so for me, I really admire that training and I've always strived, even in the ring sport, for that type of pretty obedience.
Yep.
Clear.
Yep. Cool, man.
Yeah. Reach out to him again. You guys talk about barking.
Yeah. I know I gotta have I'm gonna have Joe back on hopefully maybe next week or something. So
yeah, hell yeah.
we should decide. I think the way the layout went today with the whole send away was really dope. I think that I'm gonna keep going that way. I think for these talks, we'll pick something and go down like that.
What would be good for if Joe would, like, I really like and you guys could both speak to this because I think you both do a great job with it, but just a suggestion, like when you're taking pet dogs in, you guys are getting really great attitudes out of your like dogs that aren't traditional breeds for motivating, right? Like, so he was doing some nice healing work with a husky or something. It's like, how the hell is that Nordic breed doing that? And like I'm interested in like within you guys training the dogs, and if you feel some time constraints on there, like how you're doing such a nice job with having this attitude, layering over tactiles like leash pressure, even remote collar work if you're doing, and just having dogs that really show up and feel in control of the work, empowered, they look great while they're doing it. Like that would be a cool conversation. And Joe is very also like he knows exactly what he wants and how he's getting it, so I think you guys could talk about some clear pieces too, and that would be cool. So
that would be a good conversation for sure. We got about like 5 minutes. I think if anybody has any good questions out there, we'll answer 1 or 2, and then we'll let Forrest get back to his back up on the hill to his business that he does over there.
Yeah, my buddy came over and we were continuing to plant trees today, so that was
nice. Good. What kind of trees are you planting?
2 ashes, a maple, a weeping willow.
I thought you were talking about trees, like them trees.
Weed trees? No, man. Yeah. Jordan and I decided we don't want that out on our property. proper trees.
Nice.
We've got a big field. We live on 3 acres, so we've got this big field, and it just needs to be broken up with some trees. So we plant them now. In 10 years, we'll have some good shade out there. So
Nice, man. It's beautiful out there.
yeah,
Are you still thinking about doing like that little campsite?
yeah,
Or
man. I think eventually we'll like we want to have this outfitted so people can come and stay. And I've got my aim on another puppy probably in the next 6 months or something
nice.
like that. And so I'll need to come see you and Joe and whoever else so I can get good decoy work in.
Awesome.
But
Awesome.
it'll be
Awesome.
then we can have people come here too. Like Joachim Devat is working on visa to come over,
Nice.
and he's such an asset. So yeah.
When are you back at Michael's? I know I'm supposed to meet you there.
Yeah, and we got to get Darshan over there too. The school has changed a little bit. They're doing most things virtually, and it's hard to predict anything right now. So I'm not really sure
Got it.
but we'll get there.
Got it. All right, so we got a couple. Go ahead.
PH dogs, lady. So I just wanted to say that one thing that has been really helpful for me and people that have gone much further and been much more successful competitively in ring sport use it is like I think it's the ability to have an off switch with your dogs. Like one of the things marker systems are getting really complicated these days, but one of the things that I like to do is have a word that switches the dog mentally from toy or from like prey or whatever they're doing to food work. Now we're now working for food, and I just say food, right? And I want kind of like a mental switch, and I make that eventually a down. So the down is kind of conditioned to be this place where you're going to receive food. So you go in a down and you take some food, and then from a down I'll call you back into a sit, and we can re-enter the work. And so how this could play out with ring is I just sent you for a face attack. Boop, I whistle, you come back, I play with you, out, I say food, or maybe I say down because I progressed the training and down begets food. I say down and I feed you in place. And that food could be important because I had another friend that described it this way, but food is the natural conclusion to prey, like consuming food. If you think about why an animal originally did that, forefathers of our Canis lupus familiaris, it's like you chased that thing so you could eventually kill it and consume it, right? And so we've selected dogs to be hypertrophied or crazy in all these different areas, especially the Malinois that like just love to chase. They'll do it all day long until they die. So sort of saying like, hey, you need to shut off right now and accept food kind of like flips the switch on them, and I think can settle them down a little bit. So you can use that. You should sift that into your training sessions. Like, hey, great, I just did two face attacks in a row. I'm just going to let my dog chill for 3 to 5 minutes right now and feed them a little bit of food and make sure that they accept that. Make sure that they actually change physiologically and go, I'm here, I'm present, I'm taking food. I'm not just taking it, staring at the decoy. I'm actually like able to process what I'm doing.
Yep.
And
Yep.
Of course, a killer conditioning program, right? So.
Yep. I mean, after doing ring with Wapo, I realized like that's not gonna work to have a dog that's on all the time. So definitely with this puppy, I want to make sure that when I say heel OPA, I want him to look up and be flashy. But other than that, I just let him walk around on leash. I don't really ask for any like crazy attention and focus from him if I'm gonna just put him on a down. So I've been working a lot on like, all right, we're gonna heel. Boom, you're gonna be on a down for
Cool.
5 minutes.
That's it. Yeah. Just got to show them that side of it. Yeah. I'll say this one thing about ring sport really quickly, and this is a behavior chain that exists within ring sport if you do it. The person was asking about balancing flashy obedience with just having the dog that has the stamina to go. Like, you don't have to focus heel your dog around in a field. I would never do that. I did that at the level ones with my dogs. I did a fair amount of healing, more than you would averages, more than you would commonly see. But there is a place where focused healing is perfectly supported by the progression to the decoy, and that's at when you're in your bite work, where you can come to your prep line and you can say OPA, and you can teach the dog that if you heal, you earn down, and from down you earn the attack. And there can be things that happen in between there to insulate it, but you can reinforce your focused healing because it leads to a down, which leads to the decoy. So you can absolutely teach that progression, and you can have dynamite precision focused healing, like fully effortful focused healing at each of your prep to start lines, because the dog has learned that it's a trade-off to the decoy. And of course, your training has to be good leading up to that so it doesn't like fall apart or you have mistakes that are being made. But that's a really good way to support focused healing if you wanted it, just for a short period of time, right? And there's function in that. Look at me. I know the guy's there, but look at me. Ask for the down. And from the down, if you hold it well, right, if you stabilize there, whatever, I'll send you to the decoy. And there's things you can do to like mess with the dog, not mess with them, but support them in there. But
Cool. I think we're out of here. Forrest is about to cut us off, man. That's it. It cut us off. All right, Forrest, can you hear me? Yo, Forrest.
Oh, good talk, dude.
It cut us off already. So.
Yeah, that's fine. We're good.
Yeah, it is what it is. That was good shit, man.
Yeah, good talk, Betty. That was good.
That was awesome.